Today on the official Marvel podcast, we hear from the cast of Marvel Studios Thunderbolts, including John-Kamen, David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, and Florence Pugh.
And so at the end of the day, you end up having a handful of really complicated characters that are very angry at the world and the state that they're in. And they are all in this spot together and all have to figure out how to get out together.
Plus, Jody Dankberg and George Gomez join us from Stern Pinball to walk us through the history of Marvel Pinball.
Historically, Marvel characters go way, way back to even to other pinball companies before us. But in the modern era, Iron Man is considered one of the games that helped bring the company back to life.
I'm Sade Spence.
I'm Anthony Carboni.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
Sade, we are only days away from the release of Thunderbolts, ***. How are you feeling?
I am so excited. I just adore and love Marvel movie season. It is the best. And I cannot wait to see Bucky again. I mean, in Marvel Studios Captain America Brave New World, his cameo was just too small.
It was too small. The best Bucky is the most Bucky. I've always said that, and I will continue to say it. I'm also very excited to see more Yelena Belova myself. And also, I'm kind of dying to know what that asterisk is all about.
Oh, same. But we're going to have to wait until the movie for that answer. In the meantime, we got a chance to hear from the cast of Thunderbolts, including John-Kamen, David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, and Florence Pugh. Here's Florence, who plays Yelena Belova, on continuing her character's story on the big screen.
I think when I did Black Widow, I was very unsure if fans were going to appreciate my version of Yelena and what we'd done with her. And so I think coming back all these years later has definitely felt assuring that her story gets to continue and that they want the story to continue.
And that's not all. Her return in Thunderbolts also allows her to further explore the role, including the aspects of her character relating to mental health.
I think when you think of superhero movies, you're constantly imagining these amazing people being able to do amazing things all the time, which is true. They can do amazing things, surprisingly, all the time. I think something that has been really brave of Marvel to kind of start dipping their toe into is really looking at the inner workings of these characters and how they feel, and that shiny life isn't actually so shiny at home, and what these people must be going through and what they must go through when they are around all of this action and all of this need to be on point all the time. And what does that do to your brain? How does that make them retract or mirror? You know, it's at the end of the day, they are humans. So it's been really, really thrilling to be able to look at a different side of them.
And that's not all that's new for Florence. According to her, the tone and how the film was shot was also different than her previous appearance in Marvel Studios' Black Widow.
It's always exciting to know that they're going to do something different and that they want it to look different and feel different, and they want the inner workings of every single character to feel different as well. And so at the end of the day, you end up having a handful of really complicated characters that are very angry at the world and the state that they're in, and they are all in this spot together and all have to figure out how to get out together.
That all said, you can still expect Yelena to carry her signature attitude.
Well, she's a peculiar character and she's very raw as a human. So I always try to imagine, like, if you've been kept in a certain way for a certain amount of time and your idea of the world and your idea of people and your judgment of brutality has been completely skew from the moment you were born, then you're going to be a pretty strange person when you come out the other side. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be dark. Like, it can be strange in other ways. And so I've always wanted her to be in some aspects, well, in lots of aspects of her life, peculiar.
Thunderbolts also features its share of intense physicality and stunts, challenges that Florence is all too happy to throw herself into.
I love it. I think something that I always wanted Yelena to be was, I wanted to be able to move. Like, I wanted her to do dynamic shapes and to be able to fight in all these different ways. So I think for me, most of my training has been well, if I were someone that had to do these roles or these high kicks, what would I be doing? I'd be doing them. I'd be training in that. So I think for me, it's always been less about aesthetic and more about physicality and to keep on top of that and to keep on top of being able to be mobile, I suppose, so that if I ever am able to jump in and quickly do the stunt myself, I'm able to, which I love. And I love working with stunt teams.
As for what it's like to work with an ensemble cast, well, I'll let Florence explain.
Everyone's unbelievably supportive of each other. Everybody loves hanging out with each other. And everybody is a professional. I don't think anyone comes to work late. No one makes anyone wait. We are there on set and it's hot sometimes and it's a bit grueling. And everybody is respectful of not messing anyone around, which I know should be obvious and should be the norm, but it's really not. And so when you have a whole cast that is in the same mindset as you, it's a really, really pleasant way to work. I've been given the best of the best bunch. They're all such amazing actors. And on top of that, they're such beautiful people. And they're all really funny. And they're all gorgeous. And they're all caring and thoughtful and love being here as much as I love being here. And it's been a true treasure of a job. It was a really beautiful experience to make this movie. And the cast were a massive part of that feeling. And the respect that we have for each other is something that I haven't quite felt before, especially on big movies like this. You know, everybody's just been tip top and everybody's just been an absolute joy to not only work with, but to hang out with.
Part of that ensemble included the return of David Harbour as Alexei Shoshtakov, a.k.a. Red Guardian. Here's Florence on reuniting with David after previously working with him in Black Widow.
I've really, really appreciated the time that we've had together on this, and I completely send that sentiment back to him. He's such a raw actor, and I think we both know where we're at. We both know exactly what kind of performers we are. We have huge respect for the type of performers we are, and we also love to go there with each other. And I think because we've obviously got one movie under the belt and there's been a few years in between where we can kind of figure out what we want for these two characters, it's been an utter joy basically getting really messy with him. These two characters are unbelievably damaged and they're so raw and they want so much from each other and they don't know how they can receive it. And being able to have someone like David that I can shout at, knowing full well that he's going to very much shout back at me and be ugly. I think that's, for me, I love when you get to be human on camera, when you get to be real and ugly and you get to have snot coming out of your nose, because that's what we are. We're human. And so when you get to have a scene partner that is wanting and willing to do that with you, it's a joy. And so David and I had a really, really lovely time being able to be ugly together.
According to David Harbour, that familiar dynamic between him and Florence Pugh is what helped him lean into some of the emotional beats in the film.
I think she's probably one of my favorite people I've ever acted with. And just when I act with her, you know, we're friends and we know each other and all that stuff. But when I act with her, there's something so magical about what she brings out in me. And she's so responsive. So on those days when it's just the two of us and we're working and being able to affect each other in that way, it's like surfing the greatest wave in the world if you're a surfer, or boxing a heavyweight that you've always wanted for the title. I mean, it's just the greatest. It's what you do it for.
That said, Alexei has evolved a bit since we last saw him in Black Widow.
So when they decided to continue on with the character, I was like, yeah, I'd love to be able to see those elements of him that are, you know, more earnest and more sincere and in a sense, more struggling. I mean, they're kind of weirdos, and I wanted him to really get into his weirdness.
And that's not all. Alexei also receives a bit of an upgrade when it comes to his supersuit.
I do love the upgrading of the suits. This one has a more modular feel to it, and like, you know, it's got like a breastplate. It feels almost like armor, where the first one felt more like just a suit. Like this one feels more like pieces of armor, like you have shoulder pads and knee guards and like arm guards and stuff like that. And it's fun to move in. It's fun to like work around. Occasionally you do get caught Like that breastplate will catch my neck sometimes, or sitting down with the knee pads and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it looks super cool. I love it.
And he's not the only one receiving an upgrade. Also making return to the MCU is Hannah John-Kamen, who plays Ava Starr, aka Ghost. Here's Hannah on her character's new costume.
The look is completely different. It's a different color. It's a different vibe. It's dark. It's very samurai. It's beautiful and it's strong and it's powerful and it's a warrior look. So its Ghost is now a warrior. She's a soldier. Like it's a very cool, I think, ownership that she has of it. And you can really see it's a completely different feel to the whole character and her being.
The last time we saw Ghost was in Marvel Studios' Ant-Man and the Wasp. And since then, Hannah says she's been manifesting her character's return.
It was honestly like to be part of the franchise and to do Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought at the end, I was like, well, I haven't died. And also it's just, I think in the first movie, there was just so much pain and exhaustion and this kind of battle between her morals of what's good and what's bad. And it got to this place of kind of forgiveness at the end. And it felt like, okay, this is actually the beginning of Ghost now without that trauma, of pain, that affliction, that physical affliction. It's what Michelle Pfeiffer's Janet does so beautifully is when she heals me of that, you can't just end there. Like there's got to be more now. Like now life begins. And I remember mentioning to Kevin Feige going, there's also Thunderbolts, all the way back in 2017. So, yeah, here I am. It's interesting because with this movie, yes, we're all from our own, backgrounds and franchises, but this is a completely different space now. It's a completely different shift of time. And in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ghost was so out of control and she didn't have control of her emotions, of her physicality, nothing. And in this movie, there's control, absolute control, and a different tempo, a different heartbeat, a whole different vibe and a different power, actually. And that's what I kind of approached this time round with, is that kind of feeling of stillness, calmness, and a different energy completely.
Part of that different energy that Hannah's referring to includes seeing her character work alongside a team.
We don't get along for like a lot of the movie. To be honest, I think that's where the humor is. We gradually get used to each other and what each other's isms are in order to get to really save the day and save each other. And yeah, there's some funny moments in this movie where we're trying.
Wyatt Russell, who plays John Walker, is also set to return in Thunderbolts. The last time we saw his character was in the Disney Plus series Marvel Studios' The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Here's Wyatt on what he was looking forward to the most on the Thunderbolts set.
The actors involved. Like anytime you do any movie, like when you hear the other actors that are involved, you're excited if they're the kind of actors that are going to be like amazing to play with. Their talent like just is incredible. So that always feels like some kind of like warm blanket that in these movies sometimes they're so big and the scope is so large that I always love to fall back on like the ability to at least play the moment as real, even though we're in very like fantastical stakes. And knowing that Florence, David, Hannah was going to be involved, like that was huge for me.
And while we'll get to see John Walker make his big screen debut in Thunderbolts, Wyatt says that his character isn't in the best of headspaces.
I liked the idea of starting him at a place where he'd been disgraced. He still has the idea that he's going to be helpful. He wants to fight crime. He wants to do all these things, and he wants to clean his slate so that he can be the person that he knows that he can be and get back to like what makes John Walker John Walker.
As for the tone of the film, Russell says that it's very much in line with the emotional arc of his character.
There's a lot of fun to this movie, but there's a dark undertone to these like characters' emotional arc that rides this fine line of being like dark, and exposes like emotional darkness of Marvel characters and explores that side of things. So there's like an undertone of grit that I think they really captured on film, and all while layering it in with a lot of fun. And so the humor and the grit, but it's an emotional tone. Like the tone has to strike an emotional chord with the reality of what the darkness of these characters' psyches actually are. And it explains why these Marvel characters have to band together to be a team, because without that team in place, no individual with this much trauma is going to do much good for the world, you know. But when they bond their trauma together, then they can start to heal.
You can see the team bond over their trauma when Marvel Studios Thunderbolts hits theaters on May 2nd. But until then, here's what Wyatt hopes audiences will take away from the film.
You know, I hope that they connect to the idea that, like, these are superheroes with flaws, so that they are your, you know, they're your type of superhero. We are all flawed. And that showing those flaws and those cracks, like there's something that, especially now after we've been through a lot of superhero movies that have really shown superheroes in lights where it's like, you know, they're always fighting evil. They have this ability to like just see through the bad guy, and there's like a very easily identifiable bad guy. In this, it's muddled. Like, not everyone's good, not everyone's bad. It's not the way life works. And that everybody will hopefully see an aspect of things in their life that mirror some of these characters, yet they can overcome those moments to still become the superhero that you know and love. And it's just fun. Like, there's an element to this movie that's just fun. There isn't an agenda. There's not anything about it other than, like, you go to these movies to have a good time. You go to these movies to escape reality. That just gets back to like a simple version of that that's emotionally at its core really exciting and really fun at the end of the day. And that has a little bit of a thing to say about, you know, humanity and life and who we are and why we do things. But at the end of the day, you leave the movie theater being like, I had such a blast. I love these characters. I love these guys. They're so imperfect. I want to see them again.
Anthony, when's the last time you played pinball? And I mean like a physical pinball machine.
Oh, last week.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I don't mean to
Ooh.
brag or anything, Sade, but I have no marketable or useful skills, but I'm pretty good at pinball.
Oh, wow. I am so impressed.
Thank you.
You see, because I have no idea if I am good at pinball, but my husband and I, we've planned a date where we're going to find some awesome Marvel pinball machines and just go head to head.
Oh my goodness, you gotta find the Iron Man machine. It's it's legendary.
Oh yeah, that is on the list. And I got to speak to Stern Pinball's Senior Director of Licensing and New Ventures, Jody Dankberg, and Executive VP and Chief Creative Officer, George Gomez, about pinball, including the Iron Man pinball machine, Marvel's history with pinball, and it was awesome, so that's why I am so hype. So let's take a listen. I am so excited. Today, we are talking to Jody Dankberg, the Senior Director of Licensing and New Ventures, as well as George Gomez, EVP and Chief Creative Officer of Stern Pinball. All right, so I am very new to the world of pinball, but I'm really excited to talk to you both about its history and where it is now. So to get started, what is it about pinball that led it to becoming a full-time career for both of you? Let's start with you, Jody.
I come from the musical instrument business, and about 15 years ago, one of the owners of our company came to see me and he said, "You'll never guess what I did." And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I bought a pinball company." And I said, "Why?" And I said, "I didn't know they still made pinball machines." He goes, "You know, they still make them. It's a place here in Chicago. And I really I think you should come over and check it out and help me make it rock and roll cool," is what he said. And I love it.
George, what about you?
So I'm an industrial designer by trade. And when I got out of design school, I went to work in coin-operated video games. For me, like the things I design are things that I have passion for, that, I get interested in, and I think it would be cool to design that. So I'm really fortunate. In the course of my career, I've been a toy inventor. I've designed video games both for the coin operated space and also Xbox and PlayStation. I mean, I grew up around pinball, and I played pinball as a kid. I'd go to the bowling alley on a Saturday with the scout troop to go bowling, and they had an arcade in the bowling alley, and we'd play arcade games. So it wasn't like it was alien to me, but at some point I looked at a pinball machine and I thought it would be really fun to design that. It looked like a giant toy to me. And so, I actually came to it not with a love of the game as a player, and now I play it and, I love the game, but I actually came to it with the notion that it would just be a really cool thing to design.
I think that's one thing that George and I have in common is that we both didn't come to pinball because we loved pinball. We came because of what we love to do to add to pinball.
And then you stayed for the pinball. You're like, this is awesome.
Yeah, well, it gets in your blood. Once you discover it and you get some skills and you discover it and you begin to really understand the game. For me, I had to really understand it in order to adequately design it.
Yeah. And, Jody, we've seen that you previously mentioned that you're driving the pinball renaissance. What does that mean for the game? And is pinball having a renaissance?
Absolutely. And so when I came to it, pinball was in a downturn in 2009, kind of after the recession. And Stern Pinball was left as the only pinball company making pinball machines at the time. And they were making very many. And so again, when the venture capitalists came in and bought the company and asked me and a few other people to join to help build it back up, it was all about just, again, driving the renaissance, figuring out what the products are, figuring out what they should be, what titles we should be doing, who should be making the games, how do we bring pinball back? And now we are experiencing the pinball renaissance. It's not big enough yet, but we are seeing them on the street. We're seeing them in movies and TV. We're seeing new people get into it every day. And it's pretty cool to see where we've come and where we're going to go.
Yeah, it sounds like you kind of touched on the legacy of where pinball was and how it's going to manifest. But how else do you see it moving into the future?
Well, it's something George invented a few years ago called Insider Connected. And this allows our games to be online. And now you can go into one of our pinball machines. You can log in with your profile. It will know who you are across every game that we make. So I think that's going to help drive the future of what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, the magic of what we have is that our game is very physical and visceral. And that in and of itself is a point of distinction as entertainment in the world that we live in, right? Because every other form of entertainment almost always has a screen as the pivotal point. And in our case, yes, we have a screen, but it's sort of peripheral. The game is very physical. In the studio, we like to say that the ball and the flippers are sacred. Everything else is up for discussion. Like when we connected the pinball machines a couple of years ago, it was about transforming the medium. It was about bringing it into the modern era, right? So I have an app and you get a QR code, you join for free, and you go up to any connected Stern pinball machine and scan your QR code. It's unique to you. And it'll greet you. It'll put your avatar up. It'll track your scores. It'll give you achievements. We can issue quests to the community, like, go out and play Deadpool 3 times this month, or play all the Marvel titles X number of times over the course of the month, or score this, or do this, get this multi-ball in Venom. And then we give you rewards for that. We found that little kids love the system because of the colorful badges that we issue them on their phone. They actually don't even play for score. So dad's playing for score and Johnny just wants the cool badge. So I think that makes us relevant. And I think that it's transforming how people interact with pinball machines.
I also want to ask when did Marvel enter the pinball chat? And how does Marvel fit into the world of pinball?
Historically, Marvel characters go way, way back to even to other pinball companies before us. But in the modern era, Iron Man is considered one of the games that helped bring the company back to life, because it happened at that time very early on. We were coming back from the financial crisis of 2008. The company almost went out of business.
Actually, Iron Man was the first game I ever worked on 15 years ago, and that was the first official Marvel game that we actually did. When the MCU did the Iron Man movies, we did Iron Man, and we've literally done a Marvel game almost every 2 years since.
Sounds like it was part of the Stern Pinball comeback story. That's pretty cool.
Literally, Marvel is part of the pinball renaissance, but very much so. Very much so.
Can you walk us through a bit more about the process of making a Marvel pinball game? Where does it start? How do you decide characters, stories?
Yeah, so first of all, the games are designed by a team of people. They're very diverse talents and specialists in different areas. So the game designer is responsible. Think of him sort of like the director of a film. He has to conceptualize a vision and lay out a play field and come up with ideas for the toys and the progression through the game. But, he's got partners. He's got a creative partner in the lead developer, typically a software engineer that writes the rules for the game, writes all of the software that allows the game to be interactive, create feedback elements, sound effects and lights and transformations of physical toys, animatronics, all those kinds of things. And then, of course, there are all the other necessary skills and talents: mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, illustrators, two-dimensional artists, graphic designers, and also motion graphics people. It's almost like having a video game design team attached to a pinball design team, because everything on the screen, we've had to create almost all of it from scratch. And so that means that every animation, every effect sequence, every award, all that stuff is created by these folks. There's sound designers, and there's just a whole breadth of talent that goes into making these things.
Yeah, and also on that note, I guess more in general, how does a pinball game tell a story?
First of all, games are never played the way a designer imagines them in their heads. And a good game allows for a player to play it however it is that he wants to play it. So you have to accommodate novice players that can barely keep the ball alive, and expert players that will get bored if you don't give them more interesting, more evolved things to do. So every interaction on a pinball playfield essentially reveals, or has the potential to reveal, an element of the story. There's a discovery element, just like there is in any game, and you can discover it. And the difference in pinball is that it's hard to sort of tell the story chronologically in perfect order, because, like, for example, you can do things in any order you want, but yet you get to fill out elements of the story as you progress through the game.
With Insider Connected now, we're able to save our progress throughout the games, which allows people to experience more of the story element, because the better you are at pinball, the more of the story you get to see. So when you're able to save your progress with the Insider Connected, it allows players to get more of that story that George and team are trying to tell.
George and Jody, thank you so much for your time today and, just sharing so much of pinball's history with us. It was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. It was great fun.
Remember that infamous little radioactive spider that bit Peter Parker? The one that gave him his extraordinary abilities and transformed him into the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Well, 11 years ago today, we learned that Peter Parker wasn't the spider's only victim. In fact, Amazing Spider-Man #1 from 2014 revealed that just moments after biting Peter, the spider also bit a young woman named Cindy Moon, and similar to Peter Parker, Cindy was also granted extraordinary spider abilities. However, unlike Peter, Cindy didn't keep her newfound abilities a secret from her family. She struggled to keep her powers in check, leading her and her family to Ezekiel Sims, a man with similar spider-like abilities who promised to help Cindy gain control of her powers. Ezekiel also shared that he could keep her safe from the Inheritors, a group of vampiric villains who hunt and feed on spider-powered individuals. Reluctantly, Cindy accepted his offer and was locked away for 10 years in an underground bunker. hidden away from the inheritors, where she trained with Ezekiel. Eventually, Spider-Man learned about Cindy and freed her from the subterranean vault, but by the time she returned to the real world, she discovered that her family had moved from New York City and was nowhere to be found. Today, Cindy Moon is an active spider hero going by the name Silk. When she's not slinging webs, she works as a research intern with J. Jonah Jameson at the Fact Channel TV station. There, she uses her resources to track down her family. If only she could use her resources to help her catch up on about a decade's worth of pop culture.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we hear more from the cast of Marvel Studios Thunderbolts, including Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Louis Pullman, Geraldine Viswanathan, and Sebastian Stan.
I think some of the best scenes that we've had were the scenes where you're not really sure if these guys are going to make it. It's interesting for me, sort of figuring out which one of them I will get along with better. Who's the real ringleader that I have to get on my side?
That's all for today. Make sure to leave a comment, rating, or review wherever you're listening to us right now.
This episode was hosted by Anthony Carboni and me, Sade Spence.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores.
Thanks to our Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Zachary Goldberg.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.